Hey guys, I wanted to give God glory by sharing a testimony of one of the things that He saved me from, um, and that is my past experience with sexual sin and with masturbation. And I'm sharing this because I think women, especially, can feel a lot of shame about this. I mean, men can too, for sure, but I think it's something to bring into the light, and it's actually something where it should definitely be a celebration when there's victory over that. And so the fact that Jesus helped me overcome that, I think is something that should be appreciated and can bring hope to people that I have freedom from that. And so basically my story is that growing up, my experience with sexual sin kind of started when just TV shows or movies or books that I would happen upon that ended up being inappropriate is kind of what led to me experiencing soft porn, I guess I would say, and masturbation. And I had not had my conversion yet, so I actually didn't even know that this was a serious sin until years later, when I had my conversion and then I started learning about chastity. That's when I learned that it was wrong to do this. But I mean, in my gut, my conscience just kind of knew that it was wrong too, but I didn't realize how wrong it was. Um, and actually, why I decided to stop one day was when I ended up switching to a Catholic school. I guess I kind of felt like I had to have good behavior for that, and so even though I could have continued in that sin, I feel like God gave me the grace to just stop one day, and it thankfully never became so much of an addiction that I wasn't able to stop or anything like that. I just chose to not do that anymore. But then what happened is there was a period of time about 5 years after I had stopped committing that sin where, as I was learning about chastity and hearing about how wrong it was, I felt a lot of shame about it. And I kind of felt like it was this big secret where it was if anyone knew that I had done that in the past, they would never see me the same way. And I really felt like I was defined by that sin, even though it was in my past. And so I ended up opening up to a mentor about it, an older adult, through my youth group. I emailed her to ask for prayers for overcoming shame from the past, and then or just to ask her prayers. And then when I saw her in person one day, she followed up on it, and she asked what it was about. And then I said overcoming shame from the past, and she said what past, you're only 15 or however old I was at the time. And then I told her when I was in grade 5, I masturbated. And I think my voice was shaking when I said it, and I probably almost started crying because I had she was the first person I ever told. And I just remember she looked at me and she hugged me. That was the first thing that she did. And she was just so compassionate, and I'm really grateful for how she responded to me. And then she asked me what triggers it, and I said oh, I don't do it anymore. And so that kind of helped her understand okay, it's not that my problem was not that I was struggling with it still in that moment, because that would have been a different angle of how to pastorally deal with that. But it was really it's in the past, but I'm actually just having a hard time not getting over it, but moving on from it. And she messaged me, I think later that night or the next day, and she sent me the story of St. Margaret Mary Alacoque, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but if you guys have not heard the story, you should definitely look up the full one. But basically how it goes is this sister gets a vision from Jesus and she tells her priest about it, and to confirm the vision, the priest says, like, next time that Jesus appears to you, ask him what my last mortal sin was, as in like the priest's last mortal sin, as a way to verify, because only Jesus would know that. And then the sister like asks Jesus next time that he appears to her, and Jesus says, I don't remember. And then the sister goes afterwards and tells the priest what Jesus said, and that's how he knew that it was really Jesus, because when you go to confession and you are forgiven, like Jesus acts as if he does not remember that sin, because like from his perspective, like your soul is like wiped clean, like washed clean from that sin. And so yeah, after I told my mentor about that, it helped, but I still kind of felt like a little bit of shame about it. And you know, it was to the point where it was like this thing that I was really wrestling with in my personal life, and I would watch Catholic videos on like how to overcome shame. Like I was like, I don't understand why this was like 5 years ago, like why am I still thinking about it? And Father Mike Schmitz has an amazing video where he says that, guilt has to do with like you did something wrong, but shame has to do with you feel like you are bad. And part of it is like how you think you'll be perceived by other people. And so one of the antidotes to shame, like confession might not necessarily overcome shame. It might deal with guilt, and it does, but for shame, it might be this additional step of like you actually need to tell people about it to be free. And that's what it was in my experience. Like with the nature of shame specifically, it's not something that you can just individually pray through. Like you need to bring other people into it. And I had this really cool, terrifying experience, which I'm so grateful for, actually. It was really providential, but okay, I'm going to tell kind of the whole backstory. In my youth group, they were having this event where the theme was chastity, and at the end of the event, they were like randomly picking people to give like their testimony about chastity. Kind of wild looking back that they did that. And I was one of the people that was chosen. And I was kind of praying that I wouldn't, because I like was not ready to like share all of this with not only my youth group, but like my parents were there, my parents' friends were there, like other adults who knew me growing up. Like, yeah, I just did not want to share, so I did not that day. But then, yeah, maybe a few months later, my youth group was having like another event on chastity, and one of the speakers messages me like, yeah, maybe a couple weeks before the event, and he says like, I'm giving this talk and I need someone to give a testimony on it, and I was wondering if I could ask you to give a testimony, because how it worked in our youth group is when you're a speaker, you get like an outline, and sometimes in the outline it asks you to look for a testimony, and then it gives you a profile of like a testimony of someone who's like been through this. And so he asked me like, yeah, I want a testimony of someone who has lived out chastity for their whole life and has seen the fruit of that. And when I got his message, I probably like kind of laughed to myself like I'm doing right now, because I realized like I can't give a testimony about that because that's not my story. Like I'm not someone who's lived out chastity my entire life. And so in that moment, I knew that I could do one of two things, and I was like telling God like, okay, I could either just say like, no, like I can't give that testimony, or I could share like my real chastity testimony, because I wasn't going to consider the other option of like just writing a fake testimony of like I mean, I could share part of it, like, oh, here's how I'm living chastity now and the fruit of it. But I knew that that would be doing a disservice, and like that would be dishonest to what my story really was. And at first I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to share my real testimony. Like, that's way too personal. Like, I can't do that. But as I prayed and thought about it more, like, I actually felt convicted of like, hey, like, I've been struggling with shame over this sin. And here's this opportunity being handed to me on a silver platter of like, what if you did? Like, what if, 2 weeks from now, like, you actually stood up in front of your youth group and like shared this testimony with them? And so I chose the second option. I wrote out like a 1-page testimony, and the first line of it was like, you're probably expecting me to share a story about how I've lived chastity for my whole life, but like a lot of people, that's not my story. So there's that for a hook. But yeah, I wrote it out and I sent it to him, and he received it really well. And the week leading up to me sharing that testimony, I was like, I really prayed through that testimony. Like, first of all, I wanted to be able to say it without crying. And so I would practice saying it out loud. That was important. Like, not just in my head. I needed to practice like saying the words out loud. And I wanted to say them so many times that it could just become a habit, and I could just like say it without really thinking about the meaning of what I was saying. Because, if I thought too deeply about it during the actual sharing in front of all those people, who knows what I might cry or like have some sort of visceral reaction. I don't know. So I practiced it, and I actually had this very like emotional encounter with the Lord one day, like in my room, where I like started crying, and I was like, God, like, I am so scared to give this testimony. Like, what are people going to think about me? Like, and then all the shame just like was like coming out again of like, I feel so much shame over this. Like, I feel like this is going to ruin my reputation. Like, people in my youth group see me as this like good Christian girl. Like, trust me when I say that, like, that is really probably how they saw me. Like, I felt like people would be scandalized to know that I had committed these sins in the past, even though they were like before my conversion. And I really felt like my reputation was gonna die. Like, once I share this in a few days, like, people are never gonna see me the same way again. Like, it's gonna change the way people see me, which was like everything to me at the time. And I think that was like really important for me to have that moment with the Lord of just like, I knew what I was getting into when I was going to be sharing this testimony. Like, it was very weighty and significant. Like, I knew what it would mean for me to share it. But yeah, so every day for a week, like, I was going through that. And then the day of, I was like taking the SkyTrain, our public transportation system, to the event, and it was in the afternoon, and I didn't eat anything that day, like breakfast or lunch, because I knew that I was going to throw up if I did. And I was so nervous to give that testimony. Like, I think the time in my life that I felt the most scared was when I shared with my youth group the story of like experiencing suicidal thoughts. That one I was so nervous, like my voice was shaking. I had never experienced this before. I felt like pins and needles like up my forearms, like my arms were going numb, like I was losing blood circulation. Like, I've never again experienced that level of fear in my life. That was scary. But the second scariest thing I've ever been through was giving this testimony in front of my youth group. But I did, and again, even after I shared it, the shame didn't go away like the next day. It helped, but there was still like a little bit of it lingering. But over time, like, yeah, the feeling of shame was like pretty much completely gone, and I do attribute it to because I gave that testimony, like I was like, wow, I'm finally free because I've done the hard thing of like I've said this thing in front of people who know me and proven to myself that they like didn't ostracize me after I said that. And so yeah, I think it's such a testament of God's grace, like the providence of like helping me like overcome the sin, but overcoming the shame, because the shame actually lasted like years afterwards. As you can see, like it almost feels like it affected me. I don't want to say it affected me more than the sin did, but again, like I didn't even have full knowledge when I was committing the sin because I actually didn't understand how bad it was. But it did, it definitely still had effects on me for sure. And like to this day, like even though I don't struggle with that per se, like I still struggle with like temptations to lust, you know, and like I'm not in a relationship right now, but I still have to like keep my thoughts pure, especially when I experience attraction and desire and like all these like emotions and like movements that happen like emotionally and mentally and spiritually. And so yeah, it's an ongoing battle, and I kind of feel like I have to always be on guard and aware of it like every single day. Saint Maria Goretti is probably one of the saints I ask for intercession for the most, because sometimes like when I am experiencing temptation, I will just automatically be like, Saint Maria Goretti, pray for us. Like that just like comes out in my mind. But yeah, I hope this testimony can show you that there's hope and that community is super powerful, and there is so much freedom in saying things out loud and sharing them with people. Like the more that you feel ashamed or the sense of like I can never tell anyone about this, like how much more like you probably do need to tell someone about it. And that's some advice that a good friend gave me as well in the past. So yeah, God bless you, and I hope that this video helped.